My name is Bill Scott. I'm the president of Store Report. My association with convenience stores began in 1978, 42 years ago. It's nearly half my life. The memory of my first connection with an operator is so vivid, sometimes it feels like it was only yesterday. It all began for me when a young man fresh out of college sat in my office and explained to me how his dad, a fuel oil jobber in Denver, had just assigned him the task of overseeing their new convenience store division. What a way to cut your teeth. While he tried as hard as he could to explain what he referred to as retail accounting, I remember thinking it sounded like a mess. I did not want any part of it, and we parted ways as equally confused friends. Nevertheless, a mere 2 years later, I was deeply immersed in preparing the accounting software for an oil jobber who had 6 stores and a huge bulk plant. What I learned during those 42 years would take weeks to explain, so my presentation today is limited to making public my plan to change the way retailers will function over the next 20 years. The year 2020 will be remembered as the transition from the pre-COVID environment to the post-COVID environment, and its emergence, rather than changing the presentation I had planned, made it even more relevant. I want to thank Katie Bohaki, Taylor Morelli, and all of the board members of the TCSA for the opportunity to speak to you today. Ms. Morelli has told me the theme of the conference is Make Your Inventory Work for You. That's convenient because for the past 4 decades, that's been my job. I want to thank Adam Welch and the crew of Hemisphere for their assistance in making all of this possible. The topics we will be discussing today are technology and the necessity for radical change, the importance of establishing a formal chain of command in individual stores, auditing your stock, cleanliness, and the elimination of overstock, inventory and pricing and presentation, mutually beneficial supplier relationships, and minimum data analysis. We'll start by addressing some invalid assumptions that have become truth to the bulk of the convenience store operators over the past 70 years. All employees steal after 90 days. I once had a customer that believed that after 90 days, all employees steal. He practiced his assumption by firing all of his convenience store employees and replacing them every quarter. He went so far as to regularly call them in to take a polygraph and terrifying them into admitting guilt. Obviously, his convenience store business failed, but he went on to become a super jobber and made his fortune selling millions of gallons of gasoline and diesel to large convenience store chains for as little as a quarter of a cent above cost. He was not cut out for the convenience store business. I should always strive to increase foot traffic in my stores. Research has proven that 45% of all store sales are non-profitable. You need to choose your customers according to neighborhood demographics. On one occasion, I watched a ripe jobber replenish a freezer made up of 2 equally sized spaces. One area contained pints of New York fudge chunk, and the other Cherry Garcia ice cream. He filled both sections to capacity. Later in the week, I noticed something interesting that made me think. One section was growing empty, and the other was disproportionately less full. Looking at the data, I discovered he was selling 7 pints of New York fudge chunk per day. He had 22 pints of New York fudge chunk in the freezer. Odds were he would run out before the next delivery. Also, he was selling less than 2 pints per week of Cherry Garcia. He had 35 pints, enough to last him for 131 days. If the driver had swapped 121 days of Cherry Garcia for 5 days of New York chunk, it would have solved the problem. The driver did not know this. His job was to fill the freezer. In a store a mile away, the situation was reversed. Clearance tables help to remove unneeded stock. Clearance tables scream, "Nobody wants this junk." It creates a mess. It has no place in a post-COVID environment, as customers will shy away from rummaging through piles of stuff that no one wants. Promotions always drive traffic and increase profits. Promotions are designed to make manufacturers money, and promotions have unexpected consequences. For instance, cannibalization can occur when customers stop buying more profitable items to take advantage of the deal, and this can lead to brand switching that ends up costing you money. In preparation for promotions, stores often accumulate much more inventory than they can store. Promotions should be thoroughly considered by the retailer before decisions about promotions are even considered. Every product in your store has a relationship with every other product. So when you change the behavior of a product, you may be inadvertently changing the behavior of other products. For example, an associate of ours who is deeply immersed in forecasting told me that a specific brand of potato chip drove Coca-Cola sales. It stands to reason that running a promotion on a competitive item of those chips would affect Coca-Cola sales, and it may not be what you intended to happen. Promotions can be dangerous. Shippers are good investments. Nielsen's survey has proven that 85% of new products fail to sell. Shippers are generally a way to entice retailers to invest money in these products. You agree to buy a mixture of products, most of which will not sell, to get a deal on a lesser number of popular products, and you risk flooding your stores with products that may sit on your shelves for years. Don't buy shippers. Shippers result in overstock. Shippers contribute to out of dates and shrinkage. A good supplier knows what sells best in my stores. Suppliers serve large geographical areas, and the way stores operate today make it impossible for them to know what is selling in your stores. One day I was working in a customer store and saw the store manager hide several boxes in a cabinet underneath the cigarette display. I asked her what she was doing, and she told me that she received several boxes of Orbit wintergreen chewing gum with every order, and she didn't know what to do with them. There was enough of that product on the sales floor to last for a month or more. It turns out they had had a promotion on that product a year ago, and the supplier kept sending the promotional order. If you don't tell suppliers what you need, many suppliers have no alternative but to duplicate past orders. That's why she had 1,000 days of Orbit wintergreen chewing gum under the cigarette counter. If there's a big sale on goods, I need to buy as much as I can. I once had a customer in Arkansas, and on one visit to one of his stores, he took me into a stock room that measured 8 by 12, and it was stacked to the ceiling with one brand of soft drink. Obviously, he didn't understand the shelf life of carbonated soft drinks, and most were still there a year later when he closed his last store. Later, Dr. Andrea Scott will talk about leadership, team building, and change management. Radical change is long past due. Change avoidance has become a way of life. With all of the other changes we have to face, you may not have noticed that we have moved from mass markets to precision markets. Big box retailers like Sears, JCPenney, Macy's, Walmart, Target, Best Buy, and Costco know it all too well. Convenience stores have been immune to this switch for now. Walmart has openly admitted they want the convenience store business. They have just not been able to fit it into their business plan. Future threats are coming from Walmart, Instacart, Amazon Fresh. I don't think Instacart is going to be able to bring you a can of beer and a pack of Marlboros anytime soon. Amazon has been testing unattended convenience stores for years. They have had minor successes in large metropolitan areas, but I don't believe they have ventured into the smaller markets. I know how they should do it, but I have no interest in telling them how. Teleworking is becoming more acceptable. People are using less fuel and staying at home. Convenience stores face trouble if they don't change and quickly. If I were so inclined, I would purchase every convenience store I could get my hands on, because run properly, convenience stores are part of an unseen gold mine. If you are willing to make the drastic changes necessary to participate. Mom and pop retailers are the backbone of the American economy. We must see to it that they thrive. Our country depends on us.
Hi, my name is Andrea Scott. I'm a development program manager in the United States Army Engineer Research and Development Center in Vicksburg, Mississippi, and I'm happy to be here today to tell you about importance of employee development in the retail business. First, I need to tell you that the views, opinions, and thoughts in this presentation, as well as on the slides, are mine only and not those of the United States government, Department of Defense, or none of its components. You probably ask, who is she to give us advice on employee development? Why is she an expert? I'm really not, but I'm a living proof that employee development works. Why? Because by training, I'm a chemist. I've done chemical research for more than 15 years, but then I went through leadership development program and it completely changed my life. I discovered my passion for employee development. I started working with human capital, and then a position opened up in human capital and I got accepted, and I've been happy since because it gives me many different opportunities to do what I love to do, which is teaching. I always wanted to be a teacher, and this way I can help others with their professional but also personal development, and it makes me really happy. It was a great choice for me and for the company, and it helped the company as well as myself. I have many questions throughout this presentation, so for those who are attending the seminar on May 21st, feel free to submit your answers through chat and I'll answer them after the presentation. First question is, what is the biggest mistake that a retail owner can make? I would like to see your answers because there is many possible answers. Lots of you probably said mishandling your finances or perhaps not having enough finances. In my opinion, the biggest mistake that any company owner can make is underestimate your employees, because your employees are your biggest asset and you need to treat them as such, because it doesn't matter how much funding you have. If you don't have the right employees and if they are not performing as they should be performing, it can break or make your company. Doesn't matter that you're rich, but if you don't have the right employees, it can really bankrupt your company. So how can you make sure that they are producing and they will stay with that company? Number one reason for employees to stay with the company for their retention is, guess what? It's security. How can you offer them security? Through career development, and it worked in many companies and we have proof because it really works. Employees are looking for security, for jobs that they can call their position and their career, not just jobs. They are really interested in finding their career with that company. How can you make sure that their productivity increases? A number one reason for increased productivity is, guess what? Competition. If there is something for those employees to compete about, they will start competing and producing more, and that will also increase performance. So career development is really critical in many different areas, not just for retention, but also for recruitment, because word spreads around and more employees will be interested in working in your company and they'll be more qualified. And also it helps with job satisfaction, morale. So it's a win-win situation and it can help in many different ways. Another question for you, those attending the seminar on May 21st, you can submit your answers to chat, is how do we do it? What, in your opinion, is the best way to do it? In my opinion, it's through training. Or you probably tell me, oh, my company is too small to do training, or I've tried it and employees were not interested, or they just wouldn't do it. Maybe you didn't have the right approach. So doesn't matter what size your company is, doesn't matter how much money you have, because training can be tailored towards your needs, towards what you need, what the company goals are, what you want to achieve. And it can be done in many different formats. The best way, of course, which is most effective, is to do it in person. However, through the COVID-19 outbreak, in-person training had to be changed to online training because trainers weren't able to provide in-person training, as you know yourself, and participants couldn't attend in-person training due to many different travel and social gathering restrictions. And online training will become even more important in post-COVID environment because we all have to stay safe and be more careful, and there still be social gathering restrictions and social distancing rules. So online training will not go away. You said that we tried it, but employee didn't want to do it. Did you make it fun for them? Did you really make it in a format that they would enjoy doing and taking the training? Because they can do it on their work time, but they can do it also on their home time while they are with their kids or with their spouses. Let me tell you a story. Bill and I, we are two different people. We have very different personalities. So when we started dating, it was very challenging because I come from a totally different part of the world, and our traditions, our habits are very different. So he is a complete extrovert, for example. So he tells everybody everything what's on his mind, even to a complete stranger. Even things about us, private things that I wouldn't share with anybody but Bill. Another thing is when we start working on a project, I start working on it immediately as soon as I know that that project is happening. For Bill, he starts working on it as late as possible, and it drives me crazy because I want to complete it and I want to get it done because I'm an achiever, so I want to finish it as soon as possible. Then I went through this training and it opened my eyes. I finally understood that he doesn't do it to me, to irritate me. He does it because that's how he was born. That's who he is. So, and it helped our relationship tremendously. And I would take the kind of training any time of the day on my own time, so it wouldn't bother me at all. So I believe if your employees know that the training will help their personal relationships, they will be open to do it even on their own time. It can be done through audiobooks, for example. They can be listening to them on their way to work or from work. It can be done through videos or pictures or any other online web page that they would like to read or listen to or research, because we all have Facebook accounts, right? So please raise your hand if you have a Facebook account, and probably most of hands are up. So we all like to watch videos and look at pictures. So if you provide to your employees the kind of incentive, motivation, why they should do it on their own time, they'll be willing to do it. And if they see that it will really help the company to accomplish the mission, and if they are invested in that company and how the company will progress, it will really make a big difference. The format also depends on the needs of the company and what types of skills you want to develop. If the training is for newer employees, or if it's for employees who've been with the company for quite a while, or if it's for managers, or if it's for leaders, because there is very different types of training to train leaders and train managers. Leaders need to develop their leadership skills. Managers really need to develop more their technical skills. There is a myth that exists that tells everybody managers and leaders are born. That's not true. They are developed, and they are developed through training, just different types of training. Leaders, anybody can be a leader, but not everybody can be a manager, because leaders really create a vision. They inspire others, they motivate them, they care about the what and commitment. And managers, they care about more the mission, accomplishing the mission, how it's going to be done, who is going to do it, timelines, schedules, reports, control, managing. And that's why they need to develop more their technical skills than leadership skills. So there are several different levels of leaders and managers, and that builds a hierarchy. Bill will tell you about it more in his presentation. Leadership hierarchy in any organization is critical because it makes clear what people's roles and responsibilities are, and builds boundaries, which are very important in, as I said, any type of organization, not just in retail business. So how does the leadership hierarchy work? There are several different levels of leaders. Level 1 is about leading self. What does it mean? It's about understanding who you are, understanding what you do well and what you do not as well, what your strengths are and how to better use them, what your weaknesses are and how to better minimize them. After you master that level 1, leaders can go to level 2, which is about leading teams. It's more about improving them team building skills, teamwork, influencing others, creating bridges, time management, change management. If they master level 2, level 3 is bigger, it's on a higher level, and it means leading large teams or organizations. At this level, skills such as strategic planning or strategic thinking are very important, also building high performance teams. And after leaders master level 3, only then they can go to level 4, which is about leading large organizations or enterprises. And it can be inside or even outside of the United States. It can be national or international or global. So those are the differences for a leadership hierarchy. For managers, there is a similar hierarchy, but again, for managers, it's about improving their technical skills, their organizational knowledge. So the basic level starts with understanding the company's mission, understanding the basics, how it all works, getting more experience, getting more knowledge, and understanding the functions, operations, everything there is to know about the company. After they get through level 1, they can get to level 2 through more experiences, getting more competencies, more technical skills. So it works in a very similar way. It's just different types of training are needed for leaders versus managers. You ask, how can you increase their productivity and be sure they perform? I mentioned it a couple of slides back. It's through competition. So competition will be drawn through introducing a reward system, some kind of recognition system. It doesn't have to be monetary awards. It could be through a picture on a board or mentioning a name of that employee in a staff meeting, or perhaps send email to others about that employee and recognizing accomplishments that employee made. Others will see that, and we all are such creatures that we love recognition. So if other employees see that recognition, they will want to do the same thing, and they will be more inclined to increase that performance and productivity just to get the same type of recognition. You say all this works well, right? But it may be a little too complicated for my company, or maybe I don't have enough time. How would I do it? There is a simple approach how to do it. It's step by step. You start right after you hire that new employee. You probably hired an employee to perform a certain job, to be in a certain position. So first, you need to figure it out where that employee fits. If it's finding his strengths and weaknesses and communication skills, and what that person is good at, if they really fit in that role they are currently performing, or if they should be assigned a different position. Then you'll see their potential, and if they have any aspirations to go higher, if they would like to become a manager or a leader. You see if they have enough organizational knowledge, or if they need more information and build more skills and competencies. Then you too can decide where to go from there. If there is needed some specific training for that employee to become leader or manager. And we've already talked about different formats of training. I just like to add a few more ideas. For example, webinars that can be posted on the company webpage, or it could be seminars with company leaders, or company leaders, senior leaders could become mentors for newer employees, and they could share with them that knowledge, tacit knowledge that cannot be shared in any other way. There can be web pages that could help employees to understand more about the organizational rules, and there can be organizational tours and book reading. These could be audiobooks, as we already talked about it. And other types of training which are critical in retail business is customer service skills. So that can be done again online, or some of your subject matter experts in your company can teach newer employees about customer service. That usually works best. So my last question in the presentation is, did we change your mind about the future plans for the company? I hope we did, because this all works. Bill will show you examples of companies who did it and it really worked for them well. So I hope that you understand that because of the COVID-19 situation, the old normal changed and the new normal is very different, and we all have to adjust to that new normal, not just to survive, but succeed and grow. So we all need to understand that change management and what's needed for any company to get to the higher level. And one of the ways is through employee development and career development. So we have many more tips, and we'll be happy to advise you, provide guidance, design a training for you, whatever you decide that your company needs. Just feel free to contact us. Thank you for your attention. This concludes my presentation, and now I will turn it over to Bill. Thank you.
I want to prepare you because you are likely to hear things in my presentation that will challenge your assumptions in ways you might not be prepared to accept. Keep in mind that most of this will be new to you, but for me, this idea goes back to the mid-'80s, and for the past 17 years, I have thought of little else. I have created this plan, implemented and tested it, and I certify that everything I'm going to suggest you do today works, and if you will commit to it, it will work for you. Here's our mission: to see each of you on a path to increasing your annual profits by 100% or more, and seeing results within the next 90 days. Show you how to eliminate 50% of the brands you carry, select more profitable customers, and make more profitable sales. Show you how to sell your inventory before the invoice comes due, emulating a consignment arrangement. Very important. End employee theft, greatly decrease customer theft, and eliminate out-of-dates. Clean out your stock rooms, widen your sales aisles while enhancing social distancing and reducing your refrigeration costs. Turn your employees into a team that will walk over hot coals for you. Promise you these actions will not require an increase in your cost. Put an emphasis on cleanliness. People are COVID aware, and customers will not enter stores that look dirty, messy, or crowded. How are we going to do all this without you spending your money? It's simply a matter of changing the way you view your specific environment and helping to validate your pre-existing assumptions. In my 4 decades of working with convenience stores, I'm always amazed at the way they are managed. Most C-store operations begin as a single store operation, which include the owner and everyone else. As companies grow, most stores go through 3 stages. The first stage is a single store. It's an environment where we find the owner and everyone else. Generally, this plan works fairly well, but honestly, it's hard to make enough profit to pay your bills and your employees. Unless the owner's entire family is involved in running the store, having no payroll and no payroll fees, the amount of money a single store can produce does not produce enough income to pay the bills and make your investment in a store worthwhile. One small mistake can put your business in jeopardy. If you want to make this into a real business, you will need to prepare for growth, even if you have no plans for growth in the future. Did you ever notice how a golfer follows through with their swing? Why don't they stop the swing immediately after contacting the ball? It's because if they only plan to hit the ball without the follow-through, the golfer would not get the desired results. You must plan for the future if you want the present to work. In stage 2, we move into the 2 to 7 store category. A store manager for each store is usually employed. Most of the time, this position falls to the best cashier in a store that wants more than a part-time job. In my area of the country, that person is usually a female and has more than one child at home and lives on some type of public assistance. What training she does receive is just enough required to fill out the daily paperwork and make the daily bank deposits. This is more than likely the best she can hope for, and the small amount of extra pay isn't worth the responsibility. Normally, store managers burn out quickly and are always looking for a better job with higher pay. As the company grows, we may begin to see the company hire store supervisors. Stage 3 occurs as the company acquires its 8th store. By the time the 8th store is added, the dynamics of the business completely change, and this is generally when unexpected problems begin to crop up. Many operators fail after opening their 8th store for a variety of reasons, mostly because they thought it was just one more store. On average, one store supervisor is employed for the first 7 stores, and an additional store supervisor is hired for every 7th or 8th store, such as we see here. Whether or not to hire a second supervisor is especially difficult when you open store number 8, and the tendency is to wait and see if your current supervisor is able to handle one more store. It's been my experience they are not, and your business will begin to suffer. But not all supervisors are the same, and I have seen rare occasions where one supervisor is capable of overseeing 10 stores, but it's usually when a son or daughter is involved in the company and fulfills that position. At some point, you are going to need another supervisor, and you might as well prepare for it now. In a 40-store operation, the company might employ 5 or 6 supervisors, depending on the capability of each supervisor. If a supervisor doesn't understand his or her role, you may not get what you expect. Most of the time, if they visit a store and engage with the store manager, they are just in the way. Their jobs are generally to relay problems back to headquarters and be sure the store manager is doing his or her job. Store supervisors get their directions from whoever at headquarters is responsible for all store operations. In many cases, it will be the owner, and overall, this is the general plan in which a multi-store operation grows. It is at this point where I will tell you to forget everything you ever knew about how to run a convenience store, because my new plan will rebuild the foundation of your business and give you stable ground for future growth. In the year 2000, we began connecting point-of-sale systems to our cloud computers and collecting sales data in real time. The architecture of our cloud system creates an environment that makes it appear stores' headquarters and trading partners are working together in a seamless virtual environment. I'm showing you this for the purpose of demonstrating how we are able to accumulate huge quantities of data in real time, which make it possible for us to test our assumptions in the real world and to make adjustments as we progressed. I must confess, we had more failures than we had successes. For example, it might seem reasonable to assume that employees can be taught to scan incoming inventory so that we could automate the process of comparing it to the supplier invoices to validate the accuracy of the orders. But in the real world, because of the way most convenience stores function, we were forced to devise a more appropriate method which required less employee involvement, not more, virtually eliminating the errors on invoices and freeing employees up to perform more critical functions. We never would have known this if we had not failed at making the first plan work. In the end, we concluded that the system in which convenience stores operated was at fault, and the same failing system was inherited through herd mentality rather than being altered to adapt to changes in the environment. Companies that insist on staying on the current plan will find themselves at a dead end as it becomes too late to change. Later, I will show you how the older plan has decimated the 500-plus store segment of the industry and caused the tremendous growth we continue to experience in the mom-and-pop area. As you look at the proposed change in the hierarchical structure of our new plan, you will notice the position of store supervisor is missing. The inventory control specialist has replaced the store supervisor, and that position is no longer needed. Store supervisors have been retrained to become inventory control specialists and assigned to 2 to 7 stores, just as they would have been in their old supervisory positions. This new position of inventory control specialist is to manage section managers and confer with store managers. It is the job of inventory control specialist to manage the inventory in stores and work with supplier reps and pre-salesmen as needed. The VP of Inventory, a corporate position, will manage inventory control specialists and work with suppliers and manufacturer reps. Section managers are promoted within the ranks of cashiers. They work a normal shift as cashiers and spend 30 minutes per shift managing their sections. A section manager's job includes dusting and cleaning the shelves in their assigned sections, turning product facing to face customers, resolving migrations of stock, checking for overstock, stockouts, or near stockouts. Audit stock according to daily alerts. Section managers should have a listing of every product in their sections so they can print it out with a column to write down the count. You can get into something more sophisticated later. Fast movers or items of high risk should be audited more often than general stock. I will show you how to do this. Products should have a specific place in the store for several reasons. Scattering products around the store may work well in grocery store environments, but the problems it causes in managing and auditing stock outweighs the advantage of the small effect it has on increasing sales. There are many actions taking place in stores in which the actions being taken to solve a problem create worse problems than the ones we are trying to solve. In the absence of a computerized inventory control system, there are alternatives which are both inexpensive and effective, such as a small colored dot could be placed on the shelf below each product, signifying how often a product is audited. Daily, a red dot. Weekly, white dot with the number 1 through 7, signifying the day of the week. Monthly, an orange dot with the number 1 through 4, signifying the week of the month. These are merely suggestions that can be used as a guide to ensure that fast-moving or high-risk products are audited more often and make it possible for section managers to audit their entire sections in 1 month's time. Section managers replenish stock from storerooms as needed. With so much attention being paid to buying only what can be sold between delivery cycles, stock rooms are better organized and much cleaner. Section managers report directly to inventory control specialists and file simple reports which are shared with store managers. Section managers compete monthly with other section managers in their own stores, quarterly with section managers in other stores, and receive a Section Manager of the Year award. Section managers' career paths lead to a position of inventory control specialist, whose career path leads to VP of Inventory should the company become large enough to support more than one VP of Inventory. What's the effect on employees? I began to consider this idea in 2003, and I began connecting POS systems to our cloud systems and began to audit the stores. Being in a store for weeks on end, testing the software, making changes, and implementing new code, I was approached by an employee who was running a second POS position that had been idle for some time. A young female cashier asked me what we were doing. After explaining that we were auditing the store's inventory, I asked her if she would like to try her hand at using the scanner, and she instantly accepted. Other employees wanted to do the same. kind of like how Tom Sawyer talked all of his friends into whitewashing the fence in the novel of the same name. By the end of the next day, employees on break would grab the extra scanner and go out and audit inventory. It wasn't long before I had to keep the extra scanner with me to prevent cashiers from fighting over who got to play with it next. After a day or two, I noticed that some of them would come in early, before their shift started, so they could audit the inventory. I thought about the psychology of this and concluded that what they were doing was competing among themselves, each one striving to be faster and more accurate than the other. For the first time, I was watching convenience store employees excited about their jobs. By assigning certain sections of the store to different cashiers, they were performing 2 jobs instead of 1. Sections became spaces they felt a responsibility for, and it didn't take long before they were organizing their inventory, straightening the cans and packages, dusting, and something else happened that was truly amazing. I observed one cashier on break take a candy bar from the shelf, and a cashier on duty, observing this herself, said, "I hope you're going to pay for that. I don't want it showing up missing on my shift." They were literally policing themselves, and employees began to suspect we knew what was missing, when it went missing, and who took it. That's when I came to the notion that if store employees start thinking you care about your inventory, they will stop eating and drinking it, lest they get caught. It's a small thing, but it's true, and it adds up to greater profits. I learned this theory in California back in the 90s. When I was installing a computer system in Stockton, people were stealing houseplants if they weren't chained up, and the police would not respond to petty thefts because, as I was told, if you leave something laying around, you must not care too much about it. So it's okay to steal it. When I hear of employees taking inventory from stores without paying, it reminds me of that time I spent in Stockton. Exactly, what is the section manager? I want to devote extra time on section managers because I believe they are the key that makes our plan work. This will be a new term for you that will facilitate the change in staff that we have talked about. Some employees are contented to work as cashiers, and that's okay, but it's a bit of a stretch to call the position of cashier a career. Larger chains may employ a person with the position of category manager. Category managers are usually trained in grocery stores, and many have taken that position in convenience stores. Primarily, I see category managers as specialists that deal with product mix and groups of inventory. A category manager helps a store decide not on individual product selections, but type of products. For example, in the HBA department, we need aspirin, ibuprofen, and Tylenol, hairspray, toothbrushes for adults and children, etc., etc. This may be fine when a person is opening his first store. Planograms play an important role in category management, but frankly, I have yet to see any stores that I have worked in find value in the practice. They are not large enough to require a mile-high view. Assigning stock to categories may be helpful in identifying types of inventory in a store's financial statement. But we've been able to accomplish that without preventing the retailer from being able to establish the relationship between products in like categories, nor in determining the performance of those individual products. For instance, category management tells me I sold $12,000 worth of beverages last month, but I want to see how Pepsi in 20-ounce bottles competes with Coca-Cola of the same size or in a different size. When was the last time I sold a particular brand of beef jerky and exactly what I made off that sale? To me, this is critical information a retailer needs to know. And if he wants to increase his profits or consider the performance of a possible promotion, those that say that's more information than a retailer needs to know have probably never been a retailer. Cashiers always have some free time where they stand around and chat about what rifle their husband wants to buy, Brad Pitt's latest movie, or who Sally Brown is thinking about marrying. Why not give them something to do that's not only more beneficial to the retailer, but is more interesting to the employee? Why not offer them a career instead of a minimum wage job? Being a manager of the cigarette section for XYZ convenience stores sounds a lot better than I ran a cash register at an XYZ for a while. Let's give them a career, and the bulk of these employees will become loyal, productive partners in our business. In an environment like Kroger that might have 80,000 brands in a single store, without computers, trying to manage 80,000 items individually would be an impossibility. Initially, managing categories solved that problem, but when I see Walmart's empty shelves, I wonder if they even know they are out of my favorite brand. Convenience stores carry about 2,500 unique items. That's about 3% of the number of items carried in a large grocery store. And computers has given us the ability to manage items. But the category management group has lots of pull and support. They have a financial reason to prevent item-level inventory control from becoming popular in convenience stores. And they have the ear of suppliers and trade associations. But by managing items instead of categories, it gives convenience stores an advantage that will help to stop big box retailers from completely taking over the market. We are moving from mass markets to precision markets, and that's one reason you see large big box retailers shutting down. More and more consumers are rebelling against standing in long lines to check out, being forced to use automated checkouts, and spending an inordinate amount of time looking for products they entered the store to buy. Convenience stores have cashiers with untapped capabilities who are straining at the leash to become important to the business. Section managers require about 7% of the cashier's time and can perform their section manager duties by spending 30 minutes per 7-hour shift. Before we hire a new employee, we should tell them that we are most interested in hiring career-minded individuals who want to advance in the positions they hold in the company. The job of cashier should be considered the first step in the path of pursuing that career, if they are so inclined to accept it. Cashiers can gain prestige by becoming section managers, and should they move on, they will have impressive positions on their resume. A promotion to section manager costs you nothing, and a big deal for an employee who wants to get ahead. Advancement turns part-time workers into valuable assets. After a time as a trainee, the next step is to become a cashier. Cashiers who qualify as section managers might get a small increase in pay. This is a big deal for them, and an even better deal for you. Newsflash: octopus soup is not a huge seller in convenience stores. When I first began auditing my customers' stores in Mississippi some 17 years ago, in one store I ran into 3 bent and rusty cans of Campbell's octopus soup. I asked the cashier why these were in her store. She replied, "They've been here since I started working here 2 years ago, but the manager will be in a little while and you can ask her." Turns out an elderly gentleman stopped in the store several years before and asked for them. She called her supplier, and the minimum she could order were 3 cans. Are you beginning to see why many store owners don't let store managers order inventory? The fellow never came back, and they remained in the store until 2005, when Hurricane Katrina forced retailers to throw away all of their edible merchandise. Several years ago, a manager with whom I had developed good working relationship called me and asked me to see when the last time he sold a specific product. I looked in his history and saw it was 3 months ago. He went back 3 months and looked at his orders and saw where he ordered more of the product. He didn't receive it from the supplier, so he ordered it a second time. He didn't get it that time either. He ordered it one more time and then forgot about it. By the time he called me, the hole on the shelf where the product went missing had been invaded by other products, and he missed the sales from a good seller for 3 months because a customer finally asked him why he quit. Had he been using item level inventory control, the computer would have never let him forget about the item. This is called out of stock. And practically no store operator has a system to detect these things. And the losses caused by this kind of thing every year would send your child to Harvard. Over the past 17 years, we've been monitoring the sales of hundreds of convenience stores in real time. Every store has twice the inventory needed to meet customer service level. 15% of your inventory is dead. 30% is making all of your profits and cross-subsidizing the losses from the rest, making it appear you are making a small profit. We can fix this. Our goal is simple. We simply need to get rid of your dead stock and fix the marginal stock. The question is, exactly how do we go about doing this? Your first action is to get a list of the total number of items sold in your store from your POS data and put it into an Excel spreadsheet. One of your children, a kid from a local high school, or a university can show you how. You will probably need a minimum of 90 days. However, the further back you can go, the more accurate you will be. Remove any items in your store that are not on the list. Typically, for every 100 items you have, you will be removing about 15. 1,000 items, 150. 2,000 items, about 300. If they are seasonal, store them somewhere away from the store until the season comes around. What do you do with these items? Do not give them to your employees. It sets a bad precedent. Some items may be saved by repositioning them in the store, adjusting prices, or through a sale. Don't set up a clearance table. Donate non-perishable items to a food bank for a tax deduction. You might try to sell them in another store. Every store is different. Who knows? Take them home and use them yourself. Take them to the dump. Overstock is expensive. Carrying costs runs 20 to 30% per year based on what you paid for your inventory. Warehousing costs such as store rent, utilities, and salaries. Financial costs such as opportunity cost and inventory costs related to perishability. Shrinkage, theft, and insurance. Accountants will generally take the total value of your inventory at cost and divide it by 4 to calculate your carrying cost. Typically, if you have $600,000 worth of stock at cost in 10 stores, your annual carrying cost is around $150,000. Considering that 15% of that stock is not needed in the stores, removing it reduces your carrying cost and increases profits by $22,500. Every item in your store is a tiny little machine that generates cash. And if it's not doing its job, it has no business being there. The MSRP, manufacturer's suggested retail price, is a guess based upon research done by the manufacturer as to the value the consumer will place on the product during the buying decision. Turns times margin equals profit is the formula we use to value an item in a store. If margins are static, higher turns produce greater profits. If turns are static, higher margins mean greater profits. The opposite is also true. Back in the 70s, I bought 3 old slot machines in Colorado from the wife of a sheriff who had passed away and had stashed a load of broken, ill-gotten slot machines in the crawl space under their house. It was about the same time I got an interest in computers. In rebuilding them, I got an interest in the way they were set up to pay out about a certain percentage of the money put in. usually 80 to 90%. I learned it was a simple matter of replacing the wheels with the pictures on them. If a machine was set up to produce an 8% profit over a certain period of time, and a customer ran $10,000 through the machine, it would keep $2,000 and pay out $8,000 to the players. When I walk into a sea of slot machines, I can't help but think about the person that chooses which slot machines go where and how much each one of them pays out. There's only a finite amount of space in a casino, and you can bet if one of these machines goes on the fritz and starts paying out too much or not enough to keep the traffic going, or it's just plain broken, the slot manager is going to have that machine replaced. If a slot machine is dead, it is taking up space where a working slot machine could be generating cash. If it's not being played enough or it starts paying out more than it's put into it, you are losing money. C-store inventory is a lot like slot machines. They sit in your store and generate cash. But where a casino may have slot machines in the hundreds, I've worked in convenience stores that have nearly $8,000 unique products on their shelves. If our goal is to help you use your inventory to generate more cash so that you can meet payroll, pay bills, and send your kids to college, then we need to pay more attention to how each item in your store is functioning. Turns can be affected by price, popularity, seasons, and promotions. C-store owners who price their products according to the MSRP or by size, such as in the case of candy bars, are making a terrible mistake. Items should be priced by the value which is decided by the customer who frequents a specific store. Your cost is of no interest to your customers. That's your problem. Prices should be set for profit, which is a calculation of turns times margin. And as I said earlier, we all know this, but we rarely use the two pieces of data to scientifically generate more profits. Customers rarely pay attention to prices, but they tend to know whether they've been treated fairly when they pay the bill. Humans are amazing creatures. For a fight, they often plan and scheme for ways to gain an advantage over their opponents. Other animals generally react instinctively for the occasion. They will always lose against humans if their human opponent is not careless. Paying attention to items instead of categories adds an arsenal of new, more efficient weapons to the war of competition, and for a short time gives an intelligent retailer an advantage against a more formidable competitor who is acting on instinct. In my book, Retail is Detail, I demonstrated how mom and pops can function in a Walmart environment and exploit holes in the Walmart environment where there are vulnerabilities. 4 or 5 years ago, I did an analysis of the sales of honey buns in one of my customers' stores ranging over a period of days from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And here's what I discovered. When the store first opened at around 6 a.m., early morning shoppers came in mostly for coffee. And around 7 a.m., honey bun sales rose to about 16 or 17 and dropped off at around 10 a.m. There was a small bump at lunch, dropping off again, and another bump around 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. And the rest of the time, their presence in the store didn't justify the space they were occupying. The issue could be exploited by raising prices at certain times to increase margins, lowering them at other times to affect turns, and using average pricing in the interim. To add to the story, later I noticed an anomaly at a group of stores when the sales of Little Debbie honey buns had been consistently 250 to 350 per day, nearly doubled. During a phone call to a local store manager, I found out they ran a May promotion on Little Debbie honey buns that were normally priced at 50 cents, were being sold at 2 for 79 cents, and then they suddenly stopped. I did the math. The honey buns cost the retailer 35 cents each. The month immediately before the sale, in April, 300 items selling at 50 cents each totaled $150 in sales per day. Each item cost the retailer 35 cents, which came to $105 per day. The profit from the sales was $45 per day profit. During the May 2 for 79 cents sale, the store sold an average of 700 items per day for a total of $276.50. The supplier dropped the cost to 33 cents, costing the retailer $231 per day. The profit earned was $45.50 per day, with the promise of greater foot traffic. But is it worth it? Is it worth the trouble? Remember, an increase in foot traffic may not be profitable, and in an era of social distancing, it could be a bad move if the supplier tries to impress you with more foot traffic. Before we move on to the next topic, let's look at the evolution of convenience stores. From the time I started keeping records in the year 2000 through 2016, something remarkable has taken place. And it's interesting that I don't hear more about this. In the year 2000, the industry was dominated by companies that had more than 500 stores, about 47% of all the stores in America. In the same year, 1 to 10 store operators controlled a mere 8% of the market, and 45% was controlled by chains having 11 to 500 stores each. By the end of the year 2016, the industry had been turned upside down, and new Americans are flooding in to take advantage of the deals. The 1 to 10 store operators now control over 66% of the market, over 100,000 stores, and it's growing. These stores were acquired from mostly the larger chains. What happened? The market never stopped to consider why the shift took place. I believe it's because of their atrocious inventory control practices, which they have passed down to everyone else, along with the herd mentality of trying to emulate 7-Eleven and Walmart. Current management techniques no longer support operations with more than a few stores. We're going to expand on that subject in just a minute, but the truth is, it's difficult to make a profit without growth. Profit margins are getting thinner. Current store policies are ineffective, and the aversion to change prohibits them from doing things differently. Companies have chosen to cut costs as a way to increase profits, but in doing so, they have crippled their businesses to the point where the businesses can no longer support itself. In short, they attempted to fix the wrong problem and it killed them. We have run out of options. We have to make radical changes in order to survive. In 1906, a New York City newspaper printed an editorial that said, "If something wasn't done about the horse droppings in New York, in 20 years' time, New York would be buried under 6 feet of horse manure." New York was saved by the automobile. However, the law remains that horses must be diapered. About the same time, retailers understood that manure belonged in the back of the store near the saddles and bridles, and not up front with the beans and ladies' dresses. As general stores evolved into grocery stores, category management based upon common sense required there be a dairy section, a canned vegetable section, an HBA section, a soft drink section, etc., and served mainly for the convenience of the customers. Category management was never intended to serve as an accounting tool. It was proposed in the 1990s by Brian F. Harris, a former professor at USC and co-founder of Quaker Oats. The key rationale was the retailer's desire for suppliers to add value to the retailer's business rather than just the supplier's own. Category management has become a huge business taught in universities and exists primarily as an alternative to item-level inventory control, which was not economically feasible at the time. Category management used an accounting tool is killing the convenience store business and caused the collapse of the chains with over 500 stores, which we addressed in the previous charts. When I started working with convenience stores 4 decades ago, tracking item sales was not possible because very few customers were scanning their sales. Sales were recorded by posting them into categories rather than individual items. Many products did not have printed barcodes on their labels until the year 2000. A few still don't. When inventory was purchased, the cost of the items were listed on the invoice, but not in the system. In other words, the inventory was thrown into categories without its identity, quantity, and individual cost. Common categories assigned to a store might be groceries, cigarettes, soft drink, beer, and general merchandise. So retailers received at retail, say, $1,000 worth of groceries, $3,000 of cigarettes, $1,500 of soft drinks, etc. Nowhere in the retailer's systems did they record brands like Marlboro, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Little Debbie, etc. There was no way of determining what items were received and sold in the store. Retailers are forced to wait sometimes for months before they have an accounting of what items were sold and for how much, or getting an accurate count of the items currently in the stores. As scanning became more popular, so came the ability to not only track items they were selling, with supplier cooperation they could track the items they were buying, which would also lead to computer-assisted ordering. Items could then be assigned to categories if needed, but doing away with category management would make it possible to track items from the order through to the sale, allowing you to tell instantly whether the item was sold for the intended price and the profit on each and every sale. This also made it possible to do things like market basket analysis, items which commonly sold with other items, and how many days a specific item would last between delivery cycles. Item-level inventory tracking is a huge threat to the business of category management. They have college courses in category management, which would be tantamount to having a college course on typewriter repair in today's environment. I'm sure there are people still using typewriters, but I haven't seen one in a long time. Typewriters are becoming as rare as octopus soup. Category management is a dying art, and it's just a matter of time before it disappears entirely. Category management is the primary reason small retailers cannot compete with larger retailers, and it's the reason larger retailers abandon their stores. You may remember this chart from a previous slide. In 2010, in a book written by Jonathan L.S. Burns, a senior lecturer at MIT, he wrote nearly 40% of every company is unprofitable by any measure, and 20 to 30% is so profitable that it is providing all of the reported earnings and cross-subsidizing the losses. I decided to put Jonathan's statement to the test. Here is the data taken from an average of 42 convenience stores being run by one of my clients. It's so important, allow me to reiterate. 55% of the inventory sold was not profitable, 30% was profitable, and 10 to 15% was just dead. And I've gotten the same results from every store I have looked into since 2010. Let's put some numbers to it. I have worked in stores that have had almost 8,000 unique items. When you multiply that number by the multiple occurrences of those items that continue to grow in volume, the actual number of items is more than many times that figure. The average store has some 2,000 to 3,000 unique items or brands. 200 to 300 unique brands are dead. They are occupying sales space, stock rooms, and coolers, and costing you money simply by being there. They also contribute to overstock, which, by the way, is the main contributor to out-of-stocks. 600 items are producing all of the profits. They either produce profits from their own sales or they contribute to the sales of other items. And the remainder, the other 55%, are marginal or selling at a loss. These are steps you should be able to start doing immediately if you are scanning your sales. It's not a matter of whether you should be scanning or not. If you are not scanning and you have no intentions of scanning, I honestly believe you will not be in the convenience store business by the end of this decade or sooner. So for now, we will assume you are either scanning your sales or you have plans to immediately move to scanning as soon as possible. Pick your best store, preferably one that's easy for you to visit daily during the first month. If you have store managers, you may be able to teach them how to do these things. Almost all POS systems have a method to download your scanned sales into spreadsheets. You need to start accumulating that data as quickly as possible because you will need at least a month's worth of sales data to begin. 90 days is preferable, but we can get started with other steps while this is being done. Load that data into a spreadsheet and add to it every day. You only need 4 pieces of data: the date of the sale, the item sold, the price you charged the customer for each item, and the number of those items that were sold. The popularity of products in stores is dependent upon your choice of clientele. The idea that more foot traffic creates more sales and greater profits is not true. Empirical research tells us that 45% of all sales are non-profitable. In fact, many of those sales may cost you money. So it stands to reason that if you attract only customers looking for bargains, you will lose money unless you are able to increase your volume to levels unheard of in this industry. This is an area where lower prices and higher volumes of sales can drive a retailer out of business. Developing your store clientele is important because once set, it becomes harder to change. Taking the easy way out is tempting because you may see an uptick in sales, but your bottom line may suffer. Don't lower prices solely for the purpose of attracting more foot traffic. Send unprofitable customers to your competitors' stores. Both you and your competitor will be overjoyed. Catering to customers that expect to pay higher prices can also be tricky and is not a common practice in the convenience store business. You are better off catering to those that are in the middle. But don't get the idea that prices alone are your key to success. There's more to it than that, a lot more. But I promise you, if you are able to manage the simple things I'm going to ask you to do, you will double the profits in your stores without spending a penny. And you can get started immediately with what you already have. The only requirement going in is that you keep an open mind and are willing to change. And that can be the scariest thing of all. In the 1970s and 80s, convenience retailers went to grocery suppliers and received a commitment for them to keep their stores filled with inventory that would sell and make them a profit. Suppliers had been accustomed to working with grocery stores, so the same policies were adopted to work with convenience stores. The decisions made 40 and 50 years ago created a weakness in the foundation of convenience stores, and an industry that did okay until the year 2000 began to fail because of the failures to envision the future. The same mistakes were made by manufacturers, suppliers, and retailers, and until now, customers have accepted the inconveniences because they too have a herd mentality. COVID-19 is making all of us reevaluate the word convenience. And in post-COVID environments, convenience retailers are learning a painful lesson regarding retail practices which continue to dominate the industry. Convenience stores are not grocery stores. They aren't designed to accommodate mass markets. Convenience stores are better suited for precision markets, and companies designed for precision markets, such as Amazon, are getting dangerously close to taking the industry convenience operators rely on to make their living. The ones that have failed deserve to fail because they were not paying attention to what the market needs. You rarely see convenience store grocery carts in convenience stores, and the average person spends only 4 minutes per visit in one. 1 minute to get into the store, 2 minutes to find what they want, and 1 more minute to pay for their purchase. You cannot change these statistics. This is the market you serve, like it or not. It's one of the reasons for the continued existence of the industry. The idea is not to change the purpose of convenience stores, but how to make the best use of the environment that created them. Suppliers have done a fantastic job so far in helping retailers acquire stock. But whether retailers know it or not, suppliers need their retailers' help as badly as retailers need theirs. And if retailers can assist their suppliers without incurring costs of their own, it's a win-win. Suppliers want to help you, but you have to help them help you. The original commitment suppliers have made has taken on a life of its own. What started out as a simple task has turned into a nightmare. Suppliers feel they must maintain control of their ordering process or they will lose their retailers. Suppliers hold the key to making their retailers more profitable than they are today, and heaven knows we all need that. Most suppliers would love for you to order what you need, but if you cannot do that with accuracy, it will only make matters worse. As things stand, store managers can only monitor fast movers, and frankly, the infrastructure they are forced to work in makes that difficult. That in turn affects the effectiveness of their suppliers and can lead to misunderstandings and the eventual loss of their retailers. Let's look at some facts. There is too much overstock in stores, making stores look cluttered and disorganized, not to mention the tremendous cost retailers must bear. Clutter makes stores less COVID-friendly. And overstock is the father of out-of-stocks because overstock migrates into spaces where it doesn't belong. This plan, when implemented, is likely to benefit suppliers more than retailers because it will lower their fuel bills, salaries, and insurance, help them to schedule more deliveries using smaller, less expensive delivery vehicles that are more flexible and less costly. Think UPS, Federal Express, and soon the possibility of using drones. It will allow suppliers to forecast their own future needs, reducing their overstock and opening up additional warehouse space by helping them to avoid getting stuck with product they can't get rid of and shifting the burden over to the retailers. And it will eliminate 90% of the errors on invoices. In an article written by Joseph Tarnowski, published in Progressive Grocer magazine on February the 15th, 2004. $40 billion, or 4% of total retail sales, is lost each year due to supply chain disconnect. 60% of all invoices generated contain errors. Each error costs suppliers and retailers $40 to $400 to reconcile. 43% of the errors benefit retailers, and the remaining 57% of the costs are borne by retailers. A typical convenience store handles 2,940 purchases in a year. 1,764 likely contain errors. Errors cost suppliers and retailers between $70,560 to $705,600 annually. A preposterous figure, but the sheer magnitude of the figure alone should concern you. I recently spoke with Joseph, and he reported things that have gotten even worse over the past 16 years. We must fix this supply chain disconnect now. Smaller local distributors and their convenience retailers cannot bear these losses any longer. By forming intensive relationships with suppliers, both retailers and suppliers will benefit enormously. Andrea and I want to express our appreciation for your taking your time to view our presentation and we are ready to respond to your questions and to work with you on a one-to-one basis in the future, should you want to explore our proposed plan in more detail. You can reach either of us privately by emailing Bill Scott at storereport.com or calling our office at 601-847-6209. When emailing for faster service, please include TCSA in your subject line so they can be directed to the proper folder in our email system. Thank you.